Hey everybody, Curlychronicles here, and today you're joining me outside in the lovely morning fresh air. And today we are talking about emergency preparedness because a lot of folks, especially a lot of folks who don't look like us, are not talking about this, and it's very important. It's important to be prepared. The current state, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but it's a little cray-cray right now. Things are a little topsy-turvy. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and it's important to be prepared for the disaster that is most likely to happen in your particular area. And so I'm going to talk to you all about my recent emergency and how I was able to get through that because I was prepared. And depending on how long it took to fix this issue that I was experiencing, I could have been dealing with a bit of an emergency for a substantial amount of time. So I'm glad that it was fixed pretty quickly, but that just goes to show you never know what might happen, what might come up. So let's get a little bit of change of scenery, and I'll talk to you more about what that emergency was all about. Walk with me, talk with me. Birds are singing this morning. All right, so we are here in front of our well system, and we are on well water here. We're also on septic, so that is electric for the well pump to work, and the septic is, well, if you know anything about a septic system, you just kind of hope for the best and and just make sure you keep your maintenance up, and don't use things you shouldn't use down drains and toilets, but neither here nor there. This is about the well pump. So what happened? What was this emergency? Well, I was washing dishes late at night, maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe two, 3 weeks ago, and I noticed that the water started to go from a stream to a trickle. And I was like, okay. And then very quickly, that trickle just came to a halt. It was just like drip, 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 stop. And I was like, okay, hello, what's going on here? And so I said, okay, maybe it's something that is stopped up with the kitchen plumbing. Let me go try out the bathroom. Let me see what's going on there. So I go to the bathroom and I turn on the faucet, water comes out, starts to get to that trickle, and the same thing happens. Drip, 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 nothing is coming out of the pipes. They're turned completely on, both. So then I go to the bathtub, same thing happens. I go outside to the spigot, same thing happens. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? I've never experienced this before, of course. And so at this point, there's no water that is entering the house. There is no water coming out of any of the pipes, any of the plumbing. So we don't have any water, and it's 10:45 now at night. So that was the emergency, and I was like, okay, so that means no showering, no making coffee or tea in the morning, no making like oatmeal in the morning, no putting water out for the cats. Those are all the things you have to think about. The water to drink, when that happens. And so you could see very quickly, there could be a little bit of an annoyance, right? And a huge inconvenience. And so what I did was I started to research, and I started to look into plumbers, and then very quickly I saw, no, you need a well maintenance company or a well specialist. And I was like, okay, cool. So I looked around, I scoured, and I saw that there were some that were supposedly 24 hours open. I was like, cool. I was like, it's almost 11. I'm going to call anyway, and I'm just going to leave a message because I'm desperate right now. I'm like, help. So I call a place that has really good reviews, and I get their voicemail, leave a voicemail. They call me, or no, they text me back at about 5:30 the following morning. They say, hey, yes, we can actually make it out to you this morning. Let us know where you're located. We'll send one out. I said, great. So they got there at about 8:45, somewhere around there. Now, they were able to come out that quickly, but what if they weren't? Like, what if I was stuck and I just I could try another company, but you never know. Sometimes, especially with things like contracting and building right now, a lot of contractors are, you're on a waiting list if you're trying to get something built, if you're trying to get some job done. So you just never know. Luckily, I did have water on hand. I have gallons of water that are just sitting in the garage, in the shed, in boxes. They come in boxes like Crystal Geyser and those gallon containers with little handles. So I had those, so that was great. That worked out just fine. I had enough water on hand for me, the cats, tea, coffee. I wasn't inconvenienced because of that. So the question I pose is, how many of you have a good couple of gallons of water just sitting around? If you don't, you should always have some around, just because you just never know. And especially if you have kids, if you have pets, they need water. It's not just for you for a couple of hours. You have to think about everybody involved. So I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. Now, what happened? Well, I will show you. This is what happened. This little snake right here made its way into some sort of component in the well system. I don't even know where it got in, I don't know. But it messed up something probably that it should not have. And we had a bad pressure switch. So there were a couple little things there that needed to be handled or replaced and fixed. So there was that. So that was great. It didn't take very long. I was very grateful that he could take care of it in a matter of, 30 minutes or so. And it was done. Water was back on and everything was great. If I didn't have those gallons of water on hand, then it kind of would have sucked a little bit, because not only was I at home late at night, we only had one working car, and Dana works the overnight shift, so the car is gone. So I'm kind of like stranded at nighttime. I'm kind of just here. I don't typically ever leave late at night, but if I needed to, it wasn't going to happen that night. Let's just say that, right? So I was really grateful that I had the forethought to make sure I had some gallons of water on hand. Now, because water is very important, that's not my only source. I want to do more than just a couple of gallons, because if there is some sort of prolonged natural disaster where maybe access to water is a bit compromised, then you need to make sure that you have water for an extended amount of time. So we're going to change locations again, and I'm going to talk to you about another way that you can ensure that you have water on hand. One of the most precious things on the planet, one of the things that we absolutely cannot live without, besides air, is water and food, and shelter, really. So let's go to the next location, and I'm going to talk to you about the second line of defense when you need something that is more long-term. Let's go. Wild geese. There are wild geese somewhere. I never see them. I hear them, but I don't see them. I think they're in this like subdivision next to us. There's like a lake or something. I can't ever look at the damn camera. God dang it. Oh, no, jeez. What's wrong with you? Again, and this time we're at the back of the house. As you can see next to me, this is a 55-gallon water drum. And this will hold water for you for a long-term period of time. And what you can do is put a solution, you put a bleach solution in here. And what I'm going to do is put up the measurements of how much you put per gallon, so you have an idea of how you can make sure that there's no, microorganisms growing in your water supply. But it's a good idea to have extra water on hand in case something happens long term. Think Katrina, think Texas, winter storms where people didn't have access to electricity. If that's how they access their water, it was definitely a huge issue, big problem. So I got these from Uline, see here, and they come at the top. You can also get a pump that you can submerge, and then you can pump water out of it. And so that's something that immediately was important for me to make sure I secured for myself, because if you remember, if you are someone who is from the SoCal area and you lived through the Northridge earthquake, I want to say it was 1994. I was 11 years old when that happened, and it was a really big ordeal. It was rough. Like, I remember us walking to a supermarket to help them clean up, and I don't know anyone who's a young person today who's experienced that. So we may be due for another one, and that may happen in your area. You never know. And so it was just kind of interesting. I don't remember a lot of it. I just remember that. I remember cleaning up and picking up, broken jars of food and all sorts of stuff. It was a huge thing. And so I never wanted to be without the things that I needed in case something like that happened, and maybe there was like damage to plumbing or the electrical grid, and there was blackout or something. I wanted to make sure, and I rely on the electrical grid for my water. So if that's a bit iffy, it's just really important to kind of stay ahead of that and be on top of it if you can. So I have about 3 or 4 of these that I have on the property, and what we do is we fill them up with water, we put in the bleach solution, and then you just keep them covered. Now you want to keep them out of the sun, so I was pulling them out here so that I could kind of get them filled, and what I'd like to do is roll them on some caster, like a caster type frame, so I can roll them back, maybe back into the garage or something, and leave them there where they're covered, out of the sun. We're still trying to think about where we want to place them. This doesn't get a lot of sun here. When the sun's setting, it's not so harsh, but we just want to be mindful of that. So we're thinking about location. So this is another option for you. I'll put the price of these in the bar down below, in the description bar. And, consider it if you have the space. If you are an apartment, I would say go for getting some gallons of water, because this is very tough to, it's heavy and it's hard to kind of maneuver around, and so you may not have the space for something of this size, but you can put some gallons of water away. You can make sure that you have those on hand, and you can feel just a little bit better about faring through some sort of natural disaster or geopolitical occurrence. I don't know what's going on with Ukraine right now, but here we are. Hopefully nothing, but regardless, it's a good idea to be stay ahead of the story, right? So I wanted to share that with y'all today. I hope it was helpful. I hope it helped kind of get you thinking about different ways that you can be prepared wherever you are in the world, because if you're in California, your needs are going to be different than someone who lives in Wisconsin or someone who lives in Maine, or someone who lives in Hawaii, so and I'm speaking because I know a little bit more about those areas than I do about other areas in the world. I speak from a very U.S. centric standpoint. That's what I know. So I hope this is helpful, and I wanted to just start off with something that might be relevant to someone out there. And if you are someone who is in a more rural area, what do you do to make sure that you have what you need on hand, so in case some sort of emergency happens or some sort of disaster comes up, you're good? What do you do? Because I am still new to the South. I am actually going to be doing a 6-month update on all the things I experience here in the South, what I've experienced so far, what I love, what I don't love, and just kind of give my review. Overall, I don't plan on going anywhere. I love it here, but I'm going to give y'all a little update on that soon, so stay tuned for that. But I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something, and always try to make sure that you're prepared. Do what you can. See y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.